Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning. Yang berhormat Saudara Nik Nazmini Ahmad, Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Yang Amat Mulia Tunku Zain Ibni Tunku Mukhris, Founding President of IDEAS. Yang berhormat Datuk Seri Huang Tiong Si, Deputy Minister of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Yang berhormat Saudara Adli Zahari, Deputy Minister of Defence. Yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Ching Tu, Secretary General of NRES. Yang berbahagia Datuk Noazmi Dirun, Secretary General of Ministry of Economy. Yang berbahagia Datuk Technologist Dr. Haji Aminuddin Hashim, Secretary General of MOSTI. Excellencies, Foreign Ambassadors and Representatives, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the organizers of the International Greentech and Eco Products Exhibition and Conference Malaysia, IGEM, for inviting me today. Congratulations on the 15th edition and for growing this conference into a regional platform which gathers leaders in the green technology and sustainability space. Just under a decade ago, the Paris Agreement was established in 2015. Malaysia, alongside 195 signatories, have committed to reducing carbon emissions by 45% in 2030 and achieve a net zero by 2050. Since then, global progress has been admittedly skewed. The context for Malaysia's own journey to net zero has to be framed properly. Since 1750, Malaysia has contributed only 0.37% of carbon dioxide emissions. That means, from around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, the likes of the United States have emitted 65 times more CO2 than us. Despite this less than 1% contribution, this administration refuses to shirk our global responsibility. We recognize not just the social impetus, but the need to demonstrate regional leadership. For us, this is about implementing thoughtful measures that secure a sustainable future for the people of Southeast Asia. To achieve this, it forces us to address the energy trilemma, establishing security, sustainability, and affordability. This means confronting hard realities. For example, we may be the 5th largest exporter of LNG in the world, but we are also importing about 30% to fuel our own electricity needs. This poses a serious question about our foreign dependence in powering local demands. Ladies and gentlemen, countering this lies in embracing energy transition and decarbonizing at scale. But the means of doing so varies from country to country. There are fundamentally two types of pathways that countries can really turn to. One path is policy-led. This is where countries can institutionalize sustainability reporting, establish green tax incentives, or legislate net zero commitments. It creates a progressive framework that nudges the ecosystem towards adopting sustainable practices. Whereas the second path is resource dependent. Countries embrace the potential of hydrogen, building EV capacity, and using sustainable aviation fuel, for example. It's about leveraging natural resources with technology to build the right kind of renewable energy infrastructures. Some countries favor one pathway over the other. Most tend to do a combination of the two with some trade-offs. But it is very rare for a country to do both at a high level. Those that do are poised to become climate leaders and regional energy hubs. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe Malaysia is well placed to do exactly that. Our biodiversity from land to sea has blessed us with a natural competitive advantage. And Boy Binik has elaborated at length on this. For example, our sunny climate has pushed us to be the third largest manufacturer of solar panels in the world. Or, another example, how being the second largest producer of palm oil makes it easier for us to embrace biomass as an alternative fuel source. Other resource-limited countries have had to compensate through more progressive policies. This is where Malaysia, unfortunately, has traditionally played catch-up. Our legislation tends to take time and isn't always benchmarked against the best practices. When this administration takes office, we look at how long a government previously brings from the ideation of a legislation to passing it in Parliament. Normally, it takes at least 4 years. It can take 10 years. And because of that, we have to ask this question. What's the point of having an abundance of resources if we can't have the right policies that unlock value and catapult us to the front? This is the question that this administration has sprinted in the last 2 years to manage. Since taking office, we are changing that now. I'll give you one example, CCUS. I think there's now a competition between different ministries to see who can bring the legislation fastest to make up for all the lost time in the last 10 years. NRES is going to bring Climate Change Act sometime next year. I'm glad that my ministry is going to beat NRES because we are bringing CCUS legislation at, I think, a record speed of 6 months. From the ideation, formulation, bring it all the way through the processes, and we're going to pass it next month, inshallah. So if you look at CCUS, going back to this blessed country of Malaysia that has so much resources, Malaysia is blessed with several high-quality storage sites. We are repurposing what was previously an extractive business and shifting towards injection and storage. Yet, as I mentioned before, despite the whole world is looking at us because we have this abundance of resources, previously we haven't had the right regulatory framework to crowd in investors and redefine a new supply chain. And as I mentioned, within a month from now, this administration will be tabling a CCUS bill to Parliament, the first of its kind in this country. And hopefully, the robust regulatory framework is benchmarked against several countries. We have been looking quite a lot of it, and benchmarked it against best practices from Europe, and has incorporated internationally recognized standards. As you know, the path to decarbonization goes through CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Without CCUS, power plants and steel industries will just not meet their targets, and it's a reality that we have to accept. And when NRES wants to be more ambitious to meet net zero target by 2050, normally in a cabinet setting, the ministries that are most against any ambitious target for net zero are usually the ones related to the economy, because there is a trade-off. If we were to accelerate net zero commitment, there is a huge cost that the economy has to pay. But we are confident, for example, if we put the right tools and industries in place, we will be able to strike both the net zero commitments without harming our economic growth in the next 30 years. And by rolling out this legislation, for example, we are piecing yet another jigsaw to the puzzle. And this is how we hope that we will continuously demonstrate that Malaysia can marry both policy and natural resources towards net zero. It is a microcosm of our ambition, and I hope that it shows you that for Malaysia, being a regional climate leader is actually within reach. I remember when the government launched an ETR about 15 months ago, there was a lot of skepticism because on the one hand, the public feels yet another story. On the other hand, the industry feels that this is too ambitious, putting Malaysia's goal to become a regional leader in energy transition. But it is actually very realistic. This is not something far-fetched, because when we look at our inherent strengths, when coupled with sound policy, it means that Malaysia as a country can punch above our weight. And that is the message, either in energy transition, in climate change, in economic growth, in balanced socio-economic development. That is the spirit that we want to inculcate with our people, that we as a nation can punch above our weight. So ladies and gentlemen, I also would like to share that this ambition, because we have to be careful, otherwise we become short sendiri. It's very important to also gauge how other international stakeholders feel about our ambition. And I can share with you that other countries also share that excitement about the role that Malaysia can play in leading a regional energy transition. When I go to the ministerial meetings, for example, for Asia's zero emissions community, it's the largest zero emission community in Asia Pacific, I can share with you that there is a real demand from Japan, from South Korea, and even from our neighbor Singapore to see Malaysia taking the lead, especially in areas where we have inherent strengths like carbon capture and storage. And for that, in the pipeline, we will be signing a few MOUs this year with some of these countries to facilitate transboundary CCS activities. And this is the most important step that can allow us to build a global supply chain to support climate and net zero commitments, and also shipping and transportation of liquefied CO2 across boundaries. Ultimately, as YB Nick mentioned just now, being a mega diverse country comes with acknowledging that actually most countries aren't blessed like us. And sometimes we forget this fact. Having this head start means we have a greater responsibility. It doesn't matter if we aren't the biggest contributor of emissions. What matters is we show the right stewardship of our environment and push forward towards net zero at a much greater speed than other people. So with that, we have a lot of booths to visit. And I don't know whether you want to hear to more speeches. The whole idea about an expo like this is to showcase. So let's cut the chase. Once again, thank you very much to the organizers, to all those who support, and to the participants for your time. I wish you a productive conference ahead, and I hope you go back and bring that spirit of punching above our weight so that in the next 2, 3, 4 years, Malaysia will become the regional hub for climate change technology, and we will be able to assist ASEAN to accelerate transition towards net zero commitment by 2050. So thank you once again, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.